Hello everybody, Mannix here. It is time for a review on a very, very special knife. The Spyderco Tenacious, standard variant in the G10. Now this is one of the pioneers of everyday carry slash tactical budget-friendly folders. It hit the scene somewhere in the late 2000s, I want to say around 2008 or so. But what makes this knife so special is that it was one of the first knives to come out that just hit the sweet spot for everything. The thing everybody wanted, a good carryable folding knife. Not too heavy, not too light, not too small, not too big. It deploys quickly. We have a very good versatile blade. And best of all, it was cheap, a very affordable bargain folder that wasn't so cheap it would fall apart on you and have a really bad blade steel and dull up really quickly and be very difficult to resharpen, have poor construction, etc. It hit all of the check boxes that everybody was looking for and wasn't terribly expensive. And they still make these things to this day. It actually kind of blows my mind these still sell. It's been somewhere around 15 years now that I'm making this video, mid-late 2023. It started slash joined in on a trend that was going around back in the day, and a whole lot of other knives out there started mimicking this knife. There was the Buck Vantage, the Kershaw Skyline, Ontario Rat 1. It fit a kind of niche look that a lot of people were looking for. Every single thing that people wanted in a folding knife, the everything knife that could do everything as far as everyday carry tasks go, as well as defensive tasks go, and again, not be terribly expensive. That's where this knife came in, and that is what made it so insanely popular, especially back in the day. There's a lot more competition now, but this guy still kind of holds up even in 2023. Let's get the specs out of the way real quick. Overall length is 7.76 inches. The blade is 3.39 inches. Blade thickness is 0.122 inches. 8CR13 MOV blade steel right there. Appears to be a satin finish, full flat ground. Handle length, or the close length, is 4.45 inches. Weighs 4.2 ounces. G10 handle scales, liner lock, stainless steel liners in there. They are skeletonized, as you can see. Tip up, down, left, and right hand carry. We have a thumb hole for deployment. Jimping on the thumb ramp right there. Lanyard hole. So unless you count the liner lock as not being an ambidextrous locking mechanism, I kind of agree, disagree with that, whatever. The knife is fully ambidextrous. Retails at $86 MSRP. In the aftermarket today, they go for around $65. And that is kind of where my excitement for this knife began to wear off as Spyderco started driving their prices up over the last couple of years. It's a little bit expensive. It's an 8CR13 MOV blade steel, which I don't think is bad. It gets razor sharp and sharpens very easily, has okay rust resistance, very good budget steel. But with this configuration, with this blade steel, $65, you can do better. I've seen knives with a configuration like this for around the $40 range, with sometimes a better blade steel, D2. It's just kind of expensive in 2023, like a lot of Spydercos are. If this were $35-40, which was about what you could get these for back in the day, the early mid-2010s, that was a really good deal. But now it's not so much a budget-friendly knife. I mean, if this had, I don't know, AUS 10A, even then, it's still not a great price. If it was like $50, that would be okay, but like $65, it's starting to get a little expensive. It's not the end of the world. You know, you're kind of paying what I feel is 20 to maybe $25 above market value, like what a knife you could get out there with this exact configuration with that style blade steel, if not something better. It's a little bit expensive, just like most, if not all Spydercos are right now, unfortunately. So that's the big disadvantage this knife has in comparison to the other knives you can get out there on the market in 2023. However, let's go back in time a good 10 years or so and just look at this knife for what it is, face value rather than market value. So it's very comfortable, very simple ergonomics right here. We have a very good compromise of thickness, not too slim, not too thick. Personally, I like thicker handles because it's just more to hold on to. Literally, you are making more contact on the knife. It's less likely to slip out of your hands. You can do harder work with it. You can get more control over it when you have a thicker handle. If it's too thick, then it becomes an opposite issue. Now it's harder to control it because you can't really get a good grip on there. It's like holding a Desert Eagle or something. But if it's too slim, you also cannot really get a good enough grip and cannot get enough control over most knives, particularly bigger ones. Smaller knives, that's a different story, but this is right in the sweet spot, I think. It's very elegant, pillar construction. There's no backspacer. G10's right in the sweet spot of texture too. It's not too too grippy. Doesn't feel like an extremely aggressive skateboard tape or really low grit sandpaper or anything, but it's not slick that'll, slip out of your hands when they get slightly sweaty. It is a liner lock. Liner locks I'm lukewarm on. They're not, I don't think they're fantastic locking mechanisms, but they're very easy to produce. They're very affordable, and they get the job done. Unless you're really smacking the hell out of the blade on a 2x4 or something, they'll generally be fine. When you're talking about really hard use, or you're talking about super dangerous tactical use, being a soldier, an officer or something, you might want to step up to something a little bit stronger than a liner lock, but generally speaking, they are totally fine, even for certain tactical situations. They're fast and simple. If you were closing this with your left hand, you have to kind of pull the liner back with your thumb as opposed to just pushing it forward with your thumb. It's not a big deal, though. I'm sure you can get used to that pretty quickly. Great lockup, slight wiggle of side to side, no up and down. It's not the smoothest blade ever because we're just on, I think, phosphorus bronze washers, which were the pivot mechanisms to get back in the day. But in 2023, the 2020s in general, a lot of knives have smoother operation and or ball bearing tracks. And again, for this price point, especially $60-65, you can get something with a better blade steel and a ball bearing pivot and arguably a better locking mechanism with this size with a very similar configuration. So it's a little bit slow and stiff in the 2020s. Again, back in the day, this was the thing to have, though. It was fast. And don't get me wrong, it still works fine. I'm not saying it's bad, but as far as technology has improved and how much we've progressed, it's kind of just like going back in time 10 years, getting something that was one of the best things you could get on the market. But since Spyderco has not really updated this to a more recent version in recent years, but upped the price without upgrading anything else, that's kind of the issue I have with it. I still like this thing a lot. It's like a relic. It's a classic knife. It still works very well, don't get me wrong, but the competition's pretty heavy these days. Anyway, it deploys fine, though. I love the Spyderco holes. Just a simple circle, no matter what position it is in when you're opening it or closing it while your thumb's in there. It always is comfortable. Your thumb can really lock in there. It's cut at 90 degrees, so it's nice and sharp. Flicks out very easily with the tip of your thumb. You can use your thumbnail if you want. I think that's uncomfortable, so I just use the tip of my thumb. Ergonomics are good. Again, they're nice and versatile. All Spydercos I'm usually very impressed with their ergos, but these aren't like super crazy extreme or anything. We don't have like a lot of choils or a lot of lines and ups and downs to the handle. It's very simple. Pretty much anyone can grab onto this knife and be like, oh yeah, that's a good knife. Not terribly uncomfortable, but it's not like super melts in your hand either. It's right in that sweet spot of being versatile enough. You can hold this in pretty much any position you want and not be too uncomfortable, which again is one of the advantages of having a more versatile handle shape as opposed to a more extreme one. A very extreme handle shape with a lot of choils may be extremely comfortable in one or two positions for a specific hand size. But if your hands are a little bit too small or a little bit too big for that knife's handle, now it won't be comfortable for you. The advantage to a versatile handle design like this is that it'll float pretty much everybody's boat. Nice big old cutout right here too, so your thumb can get to that liner very easily. It's nice and rounded right there. Nice rounded, angled edges all around. Pocket clip is pretty much fantastic. The tension's perfect. I love this shape. I don't mind the way it looks. It's symmetrical, beautiful, perfect. I like how we got it to shoot up. It plateaus, then it pinches down. It's nice and rounded on the edges, so you won't scratch anything outside of it too easily. It won't be terribly uncomfortable around the edges if you scraped your hand across that or something. There's a decent amount poking out there. Back in the day, people didn't really care as much for loop over clips as far as I remember, but these days people would probably be complaining about that. They want it to be more loop over. That seems to be a little bit more popular these days. I personally don't really care that much, but it is quite a bit poking out of your pocket. Then again, it is certainly easier to extract it out of your pocket. Now, one little attention to detail I love that Spyderco does with their pocket clips, this cutout they have, the drilled hole in the pocket clip itself, it exposes the lanyard hole when it is in the tip up configuration. However, if you were to swap this to the tip down configuration, it comes out of the box that way. That same hole that's cut out in the pocket clip now exposes the pivot screw. So it's actually a really nice touch. It looks very proprietary. And if you were to have this in the tip-down configuration, you have slightly less poking out of your pocket there, just a little bit. We're talking like maybe a centimeter or so. I like the jimping on the liner lock right here. Really can bite your thumb in there. I like the jimping on the thumb ramp. Again, Spyderco does their jimping very, very well. Even in 2023, a lot of companies struggle to get it right. Not that I care that much, but again, it's right in the sweet spot. This knife is in the sweet spot of everything. Not too extreme of a design, but not too boring and too versatile. It's just in the sweet spot of size. They have the resilience, which is larger than this, but they also sell the persistence, which is smaller, and then the ambitious, which is even smaller. These days, they also sell this in a lightweight fashion, which has an FRN handle scale as opposed to the G10. You'll save maybe like $8 with that. Personally, I would just go with that one. Not only is it lighter, but it's also still strong enough. G10 technically is stronger than FRN, but unless you're smacking this against a sidewalk or something, you're not going to have any issues. And even then, the FRN still, I don't think, would crack if you did that either. So regardless, I do like the G10. Just feels higher quality, nice and durable. I love G10. So back in the day, early 2010s, late 2000s, this was the knife to have for the money. Again, $40 or so. You get a big ol' FFG 8CR13 MOV razor sharp. Not very difficult to resharpen either because it's so soft. Another advantage to softer steels is that they're not as easy to chip. Instead, they will tend to kind of roll over and you can sharpen those back out. If you're a knife noob, then that's particularly when I see people struggling with the softer steels. They don't like them as much because it's harder for them to resharpen and they don't retain their edge forever. I pretty much like all blade steels as long as I can get back what I put into them. What I mean is if I sharpen them for a certain amount of time, I hope that at least I'd be able to keep that edge sharp for that equal amount of time it took me to resharpen it. If I have a really hard steel that retains its edge for a long time, if it takes me a really long time to sharpen it, well, that's kind of the price you pay, and vice versa. What I don't want is an edge that will not retain itself for very long and also take forever to resharpen. That's when you get into the really low quality steels that are just poorly heat treated. So this is actually okay. I don't mind the blade steel. I don't mind 8CR13 MOV even in this day and age. But for this price point, you can do a lot better. These days for the, the $60, $65 range, you could get a knife on a ball bearing track. You could get something with a better blade steel. You could get something even bigger than this. Cold Steel says they're large Lazans. They're almost twice the size of this thing with the same blade still. $20 cheaper, $25 cheaper. As for a tactical EDC blade goes, if you just got this as a gift or you found a good sale on it, or maybe you bought one a really long time ago and you still got yours, great knife, really good budget EDC tactical blade. Will float everybody's boats. I like the way it looks. Really cool, classic EDC knife. Spyderco Tenacious will always have a special place in my heart as being one of the pioneers of the budget-friendly tactical EDC blades. I salute the Spyderco Tenacious. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun videos, and feel free to support me on Patreon, link in the description. Mannix out.